Gather round, children. It's rumor time. So, you know what isn't a rumor? Is that Sony is looking to buy Kadokawa. But what is a rumor is that Kadokawa went to Sony to be bought out by them. Rumor, FromSoftware owner Kadokawa may have approached Sony themselves to block a hostile takeover from Kakao. As we reported yesterday, Kadokawa officially confirms that Sony made them an offer, but they have yet to make a decision, as shared on Gaming Links and Rumors, subreddit by user 4000KD, Shinobi602 theorized that this may have something to do with another current Kadokawa shareholder, Kakao. Kakao, Kadokawa, and Sony are all giant conglomerates, with their hands deep in different business unlike Kadokawa. And Sony, Kakao, is from South Korea. Their core business is Kakao Talk, a messaging app that is #1 in revenue for both iOS and Android in their respective home country. Kakao's scope of business include online banking, transportation, e-commerce, and of course, entertainment. And Kakao Entertainment makes movies and shows, and yes, they produce K-pop. They also own original webtoon online comic book platform. Kakao does not have a good reputation in spite of its financial success. We're talking about a company whose founder was embroiled in gambling scandal from when it launched this year. Kakao is embroiled in a stock manipulation scandal over their successful hostile takeover of K-pop and entertainment company SM Entertainment. So 4KD's speculation is very much grounded. 4000KD shared evidence that Kakao has been slowly buying shares in their Japanese target. Notably, last 2021, Kakao already managed to bulk up to become Kadokawa's largest shareholder. 4000KD summarizes their point, quoting Shinobi on his commentary opinion on the whole situation. Typically, two parties agree to share price for a deal. Sony's not going to end up paying whatever Kadokawa's valuation rises to. What I meant for now, if Kakao wanted to take over, they'd have enough cough up even more cash, so leaking it internal could make sense. If you feel like you've been reading one of these stories about hostile takeovers and video games, you aren't imagining things. We've reported on different situations with Ubisoft, but one that could lead to the Galamont family being bought out by Tencent. But here we will share our insight on Kadokawa, Sony's situation, and something that you may not have wanted to read. Japan recently passed a new law that enabled and no longer blocked hostile takeovers of Japanese companies. The law lays out guidelines for their satisfaction, but because of these new rules, Japanese companies like 7-Eleven owner 7 and iHotdogs are now vulnerable to be taken over by foreign owners. Yes, that means beloved Japanese game companies like Nintendo, Sega, and Square Enix are all vulnerable to hostile takeovers if someone had enough hubris and money to try. So it may make sense that Kadokawa would be desperate enough to pitch a monopoly with Sony to avoid a hostile takeover. Based on what Shinobi said, it is possible that Kadokawa doesn't really want to push through with a Sony deal. Their move disclosure may be part of the company's succession like chess move to hopefully get out of this with their independence and investment from both Sony and Kadokawa intact. So if it sounds like Game of the Year maker FromSoftware is being bounced around like a tennis ball all in this news, that might actually be the case. As terrifying as a prospect of Sony Entertainment monopoly is, gamers and fans should also be wary of a company as shady as Kakao taking over to Kadokawa as well. So what I'm all learning from this is that Kadokawa does not want to be taken over by Kakao, at all. They don't want that. They have a bad reputation. Japanese companies have a real big thing of honor, even though they don't do honorable things all the time, but they would rather be with a Japanese company like Sony, and also they would rather be owned by somebody that is more confident than Kakao, given that their CEO and owner of Kakao is kind of a gambling deviant, and so they don't want to be associated with that at all. There's a big thing with gambling in Japan, it's kind of frowned upon really bad, so they don't want to be owned by somebody like that. And on top of that, a lot of their companies are Japanese and entertainment sectors. Kakao is not really known for these for being involved in any of that besides having a webtoon site, but other than that they really don't have any prowess to do so. Like, while I do think they could be doing a succession move, chess-like move, to where like they're just trying to pump their stocks so that way they can come out of this with independence, I do think there's an 80% chance that Sony does make this deal go through. They want that anime division. And the way Sony has been moving the last 5 years is terrifying. It is terrifying. Like, nobody's gonna stop them. Japan's not gonna stop them. For the people that's like, well, Japan has strict, they're not gonna stop Sony. They're just not gonna do it. It's terrifying how fast Sony has monopolized the entire market of when it comes to Crunchyroll. In the West, they now own Crunchyroll. They merged from Funimation into Crunchyroll. Aniplex is a part of PlayStation, officially a part of Sony. And also they have almost every other like streaming service or like people that make anime in their pocket. Like, they have it all in one. And with Kadokawa being in their sights, they want to make this deal go through. I'm sure Sony has been wanting to buy Kadokawa for a while now, but now that they have blood in the water like this for Kadokawa, if this is true, I guarantee you Sony's going to do everything in their power to close and to make this deal as lucrative as possible. And whatever that lucrative deal, they're probably already working on it, because to quote one of the people, Shinobi, on here, typically the two parties agree to share price for a deal. Sony's not going to end up paying whatever Kadokawa's valuation rises to. Like, they're more right now, when they started negotiating, I think they're worth about $2 billion around there. They're probably going to get a good $4 to $5 billion for all the shares. So I wouldn't doubt that it goes up to 4 or 5, maybe even 6. They more than likely can afford it, in my opinion, and they can afford it considering that they want that anime division. This has nothing to do with FromSoft. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you guys. Like, for the people who are like, well, they just want to monopolize gaming, they could give less of a fuck like about FromSoft. Like, are they gonna treat them good? Absolutely. Sony usually treats their first party games that actually make like are more offline single player games very well, for the most part. When it comes to their multiplayer people, or people who don't like put out good games and like kind of bumble, yeah, they're closed. But for the most part, they do take care of their companies. They do give them creative freedom. They do give them a big leash when it comes to budgeting, and they're good at managing their studios. So I'm not really worried about FromSoft. And again, to be honest, they could give less of a shit about FromSoft in this deal. They want that anime division, and they want that. They want the division that is the YouTube for Japan. They want also the anime division and their anime studios, and they want that mobile market as well. So for the people that are like, oh yeah, PlayStation, Sony wants monopolized gaming, this isn't a deal that's gonna bolster PlayStation studios to like a high degree, like the way Activision Blizzard did, but it is going to bolster Sony as a whole. It's going to give them pieces that they've needed, and it's also going to give them padding for areas that they're already dominating in, which is gaming. FromSoft is a great company that they can have, and a great company of developers that make good games with a lot of IPs, but what they're after for is the media part, and specifically the anime part. And I think they're going to do everything in their power to do it, because again, Sony's been moving like a shark in the water for the longest time, trying to get everything they can when it comes to anime, and I think they will succeed. Unfortunately or fortunately, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think Sony owning Kadokawa is a good thing? And by the way, like, nobody talks about this, but who would you rather them be owned by, like Sony or Kakao? Because, like, to be honest with you, I would not trust Kakao, like, as far as I can throw the entire fucking corporation building. Like, I don't trust them at all, is what I'm trying to say. I would trust Sony more. I trust them like less. Like, I don't trust them at all, but I would trust them more when it comes to like managing the studios, managing the anime studios, and like actually respecting the company, and giving them chances to flourish. Say what you want about the studios that they've closed, but they've given them budgets, they've given them freedom. They just didn't execute, and they got close. That's the way it works, unfortunately. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think this is a good deal? Do you think it's a bad deal? Are you scared that Sony might monopolize the entire world? Let me know what you think, and remember, you're pretty good.